Marcello Mafia ran New Orleans and southeastern United States. We're always involved with entrepreneurial stuff. We just happen to be criminals. Man, my military experience was a lot different than most people. I mean, I won't say it wasn't fun, but it was just, I did air traffic control. I got that job, especially with all the overtime. I mean, they can clear $400,000 a year. She committed suicide at a hotel here in Dallas. Well, a big part of me blamed myself because I knew that you can recognize if they're a victim. You can recognize if they're willing to put in hard work. As much value for as many people as possible in whatever way that we possibly can. And that is the only thing I hope from this show.
Hi, I'm Randy Roselle. Welcome to the Patriot Point Show. I'm here today with my co-host and fellow black belt and BJJ world champion, Stefan Banta. And today we have a special guest for you, all right? You normally don't get to see this guy. He's behind the scenes. He's a bit of the brains behind the Patriot Point Show. No pressure there, Alex, all right? So Alex Gordy is a veteran of the United States Air Force. He also was an air traffic controller, all right? He has a social media company, and he's the one that makes the Patriot Point Show happen, and we're very lucky to have him. Stefan and I feel just very grateful that he's decided to talk about himself and his story today. And with no further ado, Alex, let's take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all for having me on here. Be honest with you, pretty nervous about this, to be truthful. So not something that really ever tell my story to most people and everything, but I think that I think it's the right thing to do in the sense that, you know, we're all responsible for getting out there and in helping others to improve. And that if you've gone through things and then if you've, you know, been able to improve yourself in ways that those lessons were taught to me through other people learning from a lot of different situations, and it's a passing it forward almost to the next people that are trying to improve their lives and stuff. And so as much as I do not want to be here having this conversation and everything, you know, it'll be good. And so there was really just two main points that I really wanted to start before I got into this. And those two primary points were that, and we've talked about this before, about how important your environment and how important the people that you have around you are, and the effect that that can have on your life as a whole. And so a large part of my story comes down to environment and the people that I was around and the situations that, while my own choosing, were the available routes available to me, you know, growing up and everything. And so now, later on in life, having lived on my own and everything, you know, I'd say my improvement, because, you know, I consider my life into three different parts. You know, I have the beginning saga where I was the young child and then I was learning a lot of lessons and getting into trouble. I have the middle part where I was actively trying to improve myself, and now I consider phase 3 almost, to where all the lessons, that I've put together are now it's their time to really excel in life. And so environment, meaning that, you know, I've been lucky enough, you know, I'm sitting in between y'all at this moment, you know, fortunate to know that y'all yourselves are high achieving individuals and have done numerous things. I mean, God, Randy, your resume, it's ridiculous. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, how many different classes are there in the military? Because I'm pretty sure you have all of them.
The medals. You know? He said it to me, I started scrolling, I was like, is this real? You know, and obviously I knew it was real, but you know, but
Is this one of those stolen valor guys?
Yeah, I kept scrolling. I knew it was real, but I kept scrolling. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Oh, there's more. And I looked, I was like, this resume is like 7 pages long. The first page is enough for most people's whole life achievements. You know, it's pretty impressive, you know?
Yeah, so being fortunate enough to be around that and stuff, and but what that has shown me is that I think that when you've lived on both sides, when you've been surrounded by people who are not high achieving, who are not seeking success, who are following criminal paths, who are doing bad things, you see the mindset and you're wrapped into the mindset, so you don't really see outside the mindset.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate enough, you know, just how I came upon people and jobs and everything. And one of the best influence in my life is our mutual friend Mickey, and we can all say that his mindset is one of his ultimate skills, because you're not great in so many different things without the mindset, but so many different skills. And so the recent years here in Dallas I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by individuals that I can go home. I mean, I go back to New Orleans and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with everybody? You know, you just see it, like you just see the difference in society as a whole in how much less people are trying to make something happen. And so that's why I'm here in Dallas. You know, we have a strong network here, and so I wanted to start with that because that's really a lot of my story. I've always been striving for success, and a lot of times I just went down the wrong paths. You know, the wrong doors were available and I took them. I made the wrong choices a lot of times. And so a lot of my story, I do not tell the people. Most people know my story after 21. And the primary reason for that is because prior to 21, it was a whole different life. Like, these aren't the things I mention to people when I want to do business or I want to build things or I want to network. Like, you don't mention the criminal side and like the things that you overcame, you know, but
Let's start at the beginning, if you don't mind.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. So
You grew up in Louisiana, right?
I did. I thought a lot about this. So truthfully, you know, I think I grew up in a very good home in a sense. I never looked at my childhood as like a bad childhood because, I mean, I went to good schools, I played sports, I went to church youth groups, I did lots of different things that, you know, a lot of parents hope for their kids to be participating in. And that's one thing, our mother always made sure that we were social. And so, you know, I just recognize that generational issues can be as simple as, you know, my mother had us too young. It was as simple as that. She had us as a teenager, and my grandfather, you know, she unfortunately had lost her mother when she was 2 years old, so she grew up without a mother. My grandfather was never the most loving person in the world, you know, silent generation, and just, that wasn't him. But raised two girls, basically.
How old was your mother when she had you?
She was 18 with my sister, 18 or 19, and then 20 when she had me. And so she was unfortunate in the fact that, you know, my grandpa, when she turned 18, my aunt was 16. My grandpa, he left. He left the U.S. and he was like, good luck, you have a house. And so from that point on, my mom had to, you know, put my sister, finish her through high school and everything, and then she got pregnant and stuff. And so I never essentially blamed her because she herself had a rough situation, you know. But at the same time, it is what it is. And
Blamed her for what?
just, I had a very good upbringing, you know, and so like a lot of the things that I went through, I think were just the environment in general of New Orleans. And so due to the fact that, you know, we single mother and stuff, she worked a lot. We were left to be watched by a lot of other people, a lot of neighbors. You know, we were fortunate to have grandparents that were there, you know, to bring us to school and to pay for schools and to make sure we had food and to provide those things and stuff. And so we were fortunate in that aspect. And so, like, I've never thought I had a bad childhood. I really just thought I was a bad kid. And the truth of the matter, I really was like a very bad kid. And so, you know, I will say that when I speak about environment, and we grew up around a couple other families, and the best way I can explain this family is that Mississippi trailer trash married the Italian Mafia. That's literally what happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people, the Marcello Mafia ran New Orleans and southeastern United States for a long time. They got taken down by the IRS in the 80s. And so I was born right about the time they were getting taken down, but I was raised with their family after that period. So it was the same people, it was just they were poor at this point. You know, so the lifestyles of these people, what we witnessed as kids and everything, were just not the best environments. You know, a lot of violence, drugs, alcohol, you know, late nights, no discipline, no nothing. And I think that that's really the root of it. And it's, sorry, almost off topic, but not really. I was in church today, and it was funny. The pastor was talking about how he grew up in a rough neighborhood and how his mother instilled discipline on him. And that was the difference. And he went back and looked at these other kids he grew up with that didn't have any discipline. And most of them, he said, were either dead, in jail, or just the circumstances were just not good circumstances. And I think realistically is just, I grew up around that environment, you know.
So where was your dad?
He lived in New Orleans. Just dad's a whole different story. Like our dad was there till we were 1, and then he came back when I was 9 for like a year and a half, and then he came back when I was 15 for like a year and a half, and then came back when I was, so it was just come back for a year, gone.
So he wasn't really present in your life. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't the father figure.
Wasn't the father
or
figure.
the leader and mentor that you needed as a young man. Okay.
Absolutely not. No, the father figures I had were, like my neighbor's dad who would walk out and hand you a beer and be like, hide this real quick. Grandma's pissed. She knows I'm drinking again. So you're like your 10-year-old kid hiding beers for adults and stuff and getting them the cigarettes and everything. And it was just so like, while people in my family like to present that we grew up middle class and this, that, or the other, mentally we grew up with people that were very poor mindsets.
The criminal mindset.
The criminal mindsets. And so from like an early age, it basically started a thing for me where I was basically a criminal for 17 years of my life, actively. And that started at the, so let me break this down. Easiest way I can break this down to a few segments and everything. So basically, birth to 12, I was one of the worst kids in the New Orleans school system. By 6th grade, I had been kicked out of 6 schools.
Just everything?
Oh, man. Disrespect to teachers, just 2nd grade, I threw a desk at a teacher. 3rd grade, just disruption. 4th grade, stealing. Just a lot of attention seeking, a lot of if there was anything of value, I was taking it. That was just the moral. That it was just one of those things. Like early on, it was ingrained to me that money was scarce, and so it was one of those things that actually, and it really did. It started something for me. Is that I will say that my entire life, no matter what the situation, I've always been actively working in an entrepreneurial way. Like while I was a criminal, I also ran regular businesses. And while this, I was still in school. And so I've always multitasked in a sense that I've had a compartmentalized life. And so that's why most people know of me in different aspects of life, because I've never sat down and told this whole story. And so, to simplify it though, like 1st through 6th grade, it was a lot of stealing, that's when I started doing things like, obviously it was funny, the first way I actually got in trouble was I had been robbing the local grocery store for weeks. Not like just stealing gum, but like backpacks full of stuff. And I was offloading it, I was just giving it away at school. And it wasn't until the teachers at school called my mom and like, your son is like Santa Claus. He's been giving away school supplies for weeks now. What's going on here? We just thought it was parents or something. And after a while it got weird because, he's giving away too much stuff. And so, it started innocent at first, but then I remember that specifically because I was forced to do community service. And I remember that I was allowed to go bag groceries after, and I was 9 years old at this point, bagging groceries. And if you help the little old ladies to their car, they'd tip you, and at that moment I was like, money, and it started something in my mind. I think at that point I was working for money. And I don't know if a lot of people think about this, but as a minor, there's not a whole lot of job opportunities, I think, for minors and stuff. And so the best access I had for a long time was, I would rob cars, rob anything. If you left a quarter out, I was taking a quarter, and it just, it led me down a path to where basically, there was basically by 6th grade, there was no schools in New Orleans that would accept me. And so the final event basically was, I told you we spoke before, get in trouble at the mechanic shop basically, and the owner holding me at gunpoint.
You break that down for us a little bit more?
Yeah, it was, so my last school in New Orleans, I had been kicked out because I brought knives to school and I was selling knives. At that school, my 6th grade year, I got in trouble for Pokemon cards were big, so I was, going to comic book stores and I was stealing all the Pokemon cards and I'd go flip them at the schools and stuff. I was in Boy Scouts at that point, so I stole a shit ton of knives from people and I went back to school and I was selling the knives and everything. And so it was just
entrepreneurial minded.
I was always stealing and reselling it.
Yeah.
And it just.
What kind of patch did you get for that?
I know. Yeah, it was just. It was, and that was just what I was doing at that point. And so my
Is there any drugs or alcohol involved?
Not at that point. No, nothing involved at that point. Fortunately, actually, so what ended up honestly happening was probably one of the best couple of years I had. Was I was sent to a facility in Omaha,
Let's go back
Nebraska.
to the garage thing real quick. I don't
Yeah.
want to jump ahead.
Oh shit.
The gunpoint thing.
Yeah,
Let's
so,
hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, I was put out of school and I was on suspension for the knives. And my stupid ass, for some reason, decided to call the school and curse them out over the phone. Little did I know, as a 11-year-old at that point, that they could star 69, and they called back to like, hey, is Alexander Gordy at this house? My neighbor was watching me, and she's like, oh, yes, he is. Well, that was that. So then I was done with school for, calling and cursing him out, basically. And so I was at a middle point where I could not, there was no school that would accept me in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I was just sitting at home, and my neighbor was watching me, but she was an old woman. And I'd just leave, and you just leave, and she was just yelling. I'd wander the neighborhood, and I wandered the neighborhood for several months, and I ended up, robbing a lot of cars, and because I was just wandering. And
Smashing windows or just
pulling handles.
Yeah.
Pulling handles, and I ended up, seeing a mechanic shop about 3 blocks from my house, and I remember jumping over the barbed wire fence, and from there, I don't really remember. I remember I can picture the building, I can picture the cars, but then I remember going towards the car, and I don't remember anything after that. And from there, I'm just told I was held at gunpoint. The guy came in the corner, he thought it was a crackhead, is what he thought it was. Somebody going through the cars, and he said he was scared because he almost shot a kid. So this freaked out my parents, who my dad was in the picture at this point. And there was no place that would accept me. And so they sent me to Omaha, Nebraska, to a great school, honestly, a great program, Girls and Boys Town. It's a Catholic nonprofit, which they take kids predominantly from orphanages and detention centers who are still in high school or younger, and they put them into family situations. And so you live in a house with up to 8 other kids, and it's like a college community, basically. Mm-hmm. There's schools and high school, there's, field houses, and there's everything on campus, and I was there for 3.5 years and never left campus. Actually, no, one time. We went to the College World Series in Omaha. But outside of that 3.5 years, I never left the campus. And, so honestly, this was prior to this, bringing back the lack of discipline as a child. Like, I don't ever remember being punished. Like,
I was going to ask you, it sounds like you never got your ass whipped.
It was a situation where nothing would happen until it really happened. And as long as they couldn't get a hand on you, you were good. So as soon as you heard the jingle of like belts or anything like that, we'd out the house and we'd be gone. And we'd come back after dark and just wait for them to be not pissed off, basically. Mm. And it was just one of those things you ran away. Which I definitely later on in life figured how that comes into play with a lot of things. But Nebraska, I think, was a great thing for me in that let's go into this. So 3.5 years I was there, and it was very influential on me. I got there when I was 12 years old. It was a completely different environment than I was used to. A lot of these kids were from these were mostly ghettos. Mm. Most of them were from the ghetto and stuff. So I was one of the few white kids most of the time, which growing up in New Orleans, I never even thought about anything about that. New Orleans' population is 90% black. So growing up my entire life, like the people at the grocery store, like the sweet old ladies at the counters, like I never thought there was no racial division, which, hell, my first 3 girlfriends in life were black. And it started because in Boys Town, it was, you went to school, you played sports, and they taught you how to function in society, how to follow rules, how to accept criticism, how to give feedback. They really tried to make you a better human, social skill-wise.
A sense of morality, maybe?
Yes.
Yes. Because it didn't sound like you had much of one as a young kid.
I didn't. No, I just...
Like, nobody ever taught you stealing was wrong?
And that's the crazy thing. Like, and it's taken me a long time to even see that. Like, yeah. I always envisioned my childhood very different from what it was. It wasn't until I started to talk to people and express what my childhood actually was that people are like, what the hell? Like what,
Yeah.
where were the parents? What was
Yeah.
going on, you know?
Lying, cheating, stealing, these are bad things.
Yeah. And it just, you know, unfortunately, their story doesn't really get any better for many years. Boys Town was a good period for me, 12 to 15. I would say that the most beneficial things in that were that they were really big on reading and writing, and whenever you got in trouble, you would write for weeks. You would write lots of papers. You would read incessantly. That's all you did was read and write, play sports, go to school. And so it was fortunate in the sense that nowadays I love reading, I love research, and I love learning. It's one of those things that I really love to do, and I'm able to sit there and just read and read. And I think only because I was forced to as a child that those skills developed and everything. But it created a period to where I could come back and function in society. Because prior to that, I just didn't give a shit, you know? And it just, I think before I leave this period, I guess one of the last schools, I went to a boarding school. And just to show it, the first week it was really getting used to the school, seeing how it was. They had boats, they had this, they had guns, they had things to do. You lived there, you lived in a dorm. And after the first week, we started school. And day one, I just said, nah, I'm going fishing. Grabbed my fishing pole, went fishing. Everybody else went to school, and I just went fishing. Like my connection to reality of how things, I guess, were supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing was just, I didn't care, you know, at that age. And I just, you know, and in that situation.
Well, it sounds like it just wasn't there.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, and it just, we had little punishment, and we never did. We could pretty much we were those kids. We were like the bad kids. And it's funny, but unfortunately I was the bad one, because literally there was a period where my mom loves to tell it. The mafia came to her and told her that your child is a bad influence for our son, so you're not allowed to hang out. And my mom thought it was hilarious. She was like, here it is, the fucking mafia telling me that my child's too bad. Like, you know, and so it just, I don't know what the issue, I was super energetic, highly creative kid, and just did not care about rules or authority. I wasn't violent in a sense or anything.
No guidance.
I just did whatever I wanted to do.
You needed a dad.
Yeah, I needed somebody to whoop my ass a little bit and tell me, hey.
You needed a dad.
Yeah.
You needed a mentor. You needed a leader, somebody to show you the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, truthfully. And that's the way I look at it now.
That's why fathers are so important in the home.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it's a big part of how, you know, a strong family, and my beliefs now, we'll get more into. The strong family, the strong father figure, the strong mother figure, these figures are so vital from such a young age, because so many of your characteristics and traits and personality are developed at a young age, that if these things are not corrected, truthfully, I mean, I have like a angel on my shoulder that I am here talking to y'all, because there were so many opportunities for me to not be here. And that's why I'm sitting here now, I think, because I'm appreciative of the opportunity even to speak. And so, getting back to Boys Town, the biggest thing I can leave from there is that it taught me how to function in society, more or less. How to play the part, how to be quiet, how to sit in class, how to do it. But at the same time, I was still surrounded by criminals. And so, I mean, we had car thieves, we had arsonists, we had people for weapons assault, we had a few murderers in there, we had rapists. And like, these were the kids that 12 to 15 that I grew up with. They were my friends, basically. And so even though I left New Orleans and I was in a better environment, the environment that I was in was still a similar mindset. It was still a very poor mindset, still criminal mindset. And so when I was 15, I left Boys Town. I went to Canada for a few months, worked on a farm and stuff. But, before I leave Boys, I will say that one of the greatest things there is they make you do a lot of manual labor. And so during the summers and everything, I worked digging holes for a summer. I worked on a farm with animals, chickens, pigs, vegetable farms. Like, they instilled a sense of, you will work. They paid us $1.25 an hour, but I mean, they paid us, but they made you work for what and earned for a living, and so they taught many of the lessons that I think are missing from society in general. And that's why I think these facilities, it's something we should emulate and we should have more of, a family setting that teaches morals and how to function in society and stuff. And so, although I would like to say it worked out for me, but it didn't. When I was 15, I left Boys Town. And I left, and another guy from Boys Town left at the same time. He was also from New Orleans, so naturally I hung out with him. We ended up going to the same school and stuff. And so naturally I just started hanging out with him. And now as an adult, I see I see the signs. And his father was two strike, he was a Hells Angels hitman from California that was super bipolar, would wake up, break things, shoot guns and stuff. He was a gunsmith. And so his home life wasn't great. And this was the first person that I started hanging out with again. So this was the home that I was in immediately. And, and so the first year that I'm back from Boys Town, 16, started, a lot of pain pills. We started drinking. This is when the crime actually started again, organized crime in a sense. And so within the first year of me getting out of Boys Town, by the time I was 16, I was arrested for real, the real first criminal arrest, to where I got, 21 charges of simple burglary for multiple, basically car stealing sprees that we had gone on in the weeks before. And so I came back, I was hanging out with this guy and everything, his friends from his neighborhood. And I should state this, New Orleans is a cesspool for bad people. And so while there are a lot of good people in New Orleans, it's very easy to get into a lifestyle in New Orleans of partying, drugs, alcohol, and stuff, because that is a center point of New Orleans. That's what a city is known for.
It's almost kind of like the theme of the city.
That's the theme of the city.
It'd be like Vegas.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's why Vegas, I've never been to Vegas. One of the few I haven't been to, because I'm like, why would I go to Vegas? It's like growing up in New Orleans. And, and I think a lot of kids grow up doing that. I think that something I always heard is New Orleans kids do better in college, but I don't necessarily believe. But the whole reason behind it was because they get their partying out in high school, like the college kids do in college. And which is very true, but I don't believe in the whole we do better in college situation. But it, immediately, my life at this point, I got real big into the partying and stuff. A lot of weekend drinking, a lot of partying at people's homes from 16 to 18 at this period, a lot of drug use, a lot of ecstasy, and just, it was during this period, I was still going to school, I was still in high school, I still did fine in school. I actually ended up, funny enough, graduating from high school with a full ride to college. But I was still not doing a lot of good things on the outside. And so, I think that it got to a point from 16 to 18 that life just progressed to where I was, from 18, actually Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. 18, there was a lot of different changes. A lot of opportunity came to New Orleans in 2005, 2006, in the sense that there were so many jobs available, low-skill labor jobs. And so it was during that period that my entrepreneurial side really picked up again. I built a crew and we started demoing homes. We started cutting trees. We started building fences and everything. So for the years after Katrina in New Orleans until age 21, so I said I've always maintained multiple sides to my life in a sense. What year was this? This was 2005 through 2009. 2005 to 2009. And so during this period, I finished high school, I was in college, and finished high school, went to college, was going to school for business, but at the same time, I remember immediately day one of college, I remember graduating from high school, and funny enough, I should mention this. So I didn't actually get my high school diploma until 2.5 years after I graduated from high school. From my high school. So I graduated by state standards because private schools, they push you through more classes than what the state requires. And so I finished in a sense of that. So I got my state GED, but I wasn't given my school diploma because I had failed a class. And then I got in an incident with a teacher which I ended up threatening a teacher, so I ended up going to summer school. And then in summer school, the same thing happened where I again got in an incident with a teacher and threatened a teacher. So I was expelled from summer school. But fortunately, the principal loved me, and he's like, hey, bring me a college math class, and we'll give you your degree. And so, you know, that took 2.5 years from that point to finish it, but it eventually came, I guess. You know? But, you know, it was the same thing. I remember the first day of college, again, environment, thinking, man, I really want to try, you know, I really want to make something of myself. I really want to succeed in stuff. And I had no classes with anybody I knew, and I was so happy about that. And then at the last minute, one of my buddies didn't pay for his classes. All his classes got canceled, and then he rebooked, and all his classes were the same as mine. And I remember day one, he's like, I'll pick you up. Comes and picks me up. He opened the door, and just a cloud of weed rolls out. You know, and he's like, I got my books. And he opened his bag, and it's just, he's got a QP of weed, a scale, and a bunch of baggies. He's like, I'm ready. And I'm like, all right, so this is my classmate. This is my best friend at this point. And his whole purpose of going to college is just to sell weed. No books, no pins, no nothing. Just a scale, weed, and baggies. And I was like...
So entrepreneur too.
Funny enough, he actually runs a restaurant chain now that he owns. So his family owns a restaurant chain. But yeah, so we were always involved with entrepreneurial stuff. We just happened to be criminals. And so this honestly, college is when, you know, leading up to the events that made me choose to want to need to leave New Orleans. You know, at this point, like I said, my friend was a dealer. Katrina created an incident that a lot of people wouldn't know about unless you were a drug dealer in New Orleans at the time. But because of the 300,000 population that was removed from New Orleans, being the Ninth Ward, predominantly African-American culture, the drug supply in New Orleans also dried up after Katrina. And so, by chance, a friend of ours came back from California with a Connect and just was doling out pounds and pounds and sheets of acid and cocaine. And it was just like, our friend supplied New Orleans after Katrina, is what happened. And it was one of those things, we all want to make money, and there's somebody just giving away pounds of weed, and it's like, all right. You know, now I'm not going to say we were ever successful in this. You know, I think we were too much of potheads at that point. We ended up smoking most of the weed and everything, and it just wasn't successful. But again, it was just like being in that, and it wasn't just seeking, like I didn't want to be a drug dealer. But the opportunity was there, and at the same time, I didn't choose not to be a drug dealer. You know, it just, everybody around me was doing it. It was just the easy way for money. And, you know, we were used to seeing it, seeing parents do it, seeing other kids do it and everything. And it just led me into that lifestyle. And so from 18 to 21, I was actually a legit criminal in that sense that, you know, we were dealing and stuff. And it actually, 18 is actually, to bring back the fighting side that y'all are more associated with, 18 to 21 is actually the one time in my life that I've considered that I trained martial arts. And it was during that period that one of my crazy friends, he was, this guy was also a drug dealer, and he also was the cop that ran felony courts in New Orleans. So he ran...
Wait a second, he was law enforcement?
He was law enforcement that ran the New Orleans felony courts, but he was also a supplier for me. And so...
Okay.
Yeah, so the whole criminal side of New Orleans, like it just...
Upright, righteous dude. Okay.
Exactly. So, and it's like, you know, and this is a person that I was raised with. Like this guy's grandmother raised me. And, you know, so when, you know, you get your brother essentially, here's drugs, sell this, you know, you do this. If you get arrested, it's okay. I run the felony courts. We can get this thrown out. It's not an issue. Also, if anybody pisses you off and you want them arrested, just let me know. I'll send a deputy and we'll lose them in the system for at least 6 months. So if you don't like somebody, let me know. We'll get them taken off the streets. We'll lose them in OPP. So it was New Orleans, completely corrupt system like any other city. But I just happened to grow up with the side of the corruption. Like I said, the Marcello Mafia was not there in a sense. They had money, but their family ties were still in the systems, essentially.
They had their networks.
They still had their networks in there, you know, and so it was worked out for me in that case and stuff. And it just, but yeah, so this guy, he was a cop in New Orleans, and he called me one day. He's like, put basketball pants on, shirt, picks me up, and we go and we end up doing Japanese jiu-jitsu, which a lot of people don't really know what it is. I know y'all are familiar with it and everything, but it's just literally the standard form of the samurai stand-up is what it was. We were in gis. There wasn't bullshit beer bottles and everything like that. It was formal in a gi, throws, arm breaks, large compound breaks, and that kind of stuff. And this was it was turned into a street fighting class by the lead person who was teaching, a guy named Kevin. He was the lead police officer on Bourbon Street at that point. And so he had altered it to work for street fighting, is essentially what he did. And so I was, my buddy picked me up, and for the next 3 years, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I went across the lake and we trained for 2-3 hours, Japanese jiu-jitsu. And within about 6 months of that, my primary training partner, Dennis, and best way I can describe Dennis is, Austin Powers, the movie? Mm-hmm. Okay, so like the Asian guy, the guy that throws the shoe and kills people?
Yeah.
Identical. Like Dennis has been this guy for Halloween at least a dozen times, because that's literally what he looks like. And so Dennis was my training partner, and within 6 months, he tells me, he's like, hey, you can fight, so you can come work with me on Bourbon. And Bourbon Street was, man, that was a wild 3 years. But Bourbon Street was very different nowadays than what it is. Nowadays, I couldn't do security on Bourbon right now, more than likely, because you can't hurt people. You have to grab them, restrain them, push them out. When I started working on Bourbon in 2006, at that point, it was knock them out and drag them unconscious, throw them in the street. The lead officer on Bourbon was the person that was training me. So if the cops came to talk about it, it was like, my instructor was like, what'd you use? He just wanted to know what I knocked him out with, more than anything. And so the environment from immediately, it was just
violence.
It was a lot of violence. It was a lot of fun. It was a whole different world going into that. 18 years old, I wasn't even old enough to get in the club. Like, you had to be 21 to get in, but you could work there at 18. And so I was working there, and man, it was just, there's a whole lot of stories in that I'm not gonna say on here and everything. It was 3 years of working in strip clubs, but it honestly, it was a lot of fun because, it was Dennis and I majority of the time, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. If there was a big event in the city, we would hire usually armed guards to come in. But other than that, it was 5 clubs, and it was me and Dennis. And so, and these clubs were about, a space of maybe 250 yards apart down the street from Bourbon. We had radios, and, and somebody would call incident here, and we'd take off sprinting down the street. Or if it was in your club, you just took care of it. But it was time. It was fun in the sense that, walking into like a club and just seeing like velvet chairs flying, just like stripper chairs flying across the room and everything, just a brawl going on and just jumping in. It was, it made for a lot of fun for a lot of years, just getting in there and just getting to whoop ass and stuff. And, just drunk people, like I said, when you're drunk, you can't fight.
No.
And these people are so drunk and everything, and it just...
I bounced at a country bar in Charleston, South Carolina for a while.
There you go. Yep.
It was, it wasn't a strip club, but it was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. A lot of good memory. And, and I like, from just growing up, I think at that point too, it didn't help like the scene that I was in. We were partying 6 days a week. I was working in the clubs 3 days a week, but I was also partying pretty much every other day of the week. And at that point, to be 18 and I can get us in half a dozen clubs on Bourbon Street, and we have the balcony, because people who are at the strip club are not worried about the balcony. They're worried about what's in the club. So we had free reign of balconies up and down Bourbon. We drank for free. So for a lot of years, honestly, it was fun in the fact that I had like a street that I could bring friends to and free alcohol, and and so I just got really wrapped up into this life, and I'm sitting there, I'm selling drugs, and for a lot of years it was good in the sense that, I thought I was doing well. I was running a landscaping business. I was running a fencing business. I was running drugs. I was, and I was still in school. Like, I actually was doing well in school still. you know. And funny enough, I've been one class away from a degree for 9 years. Funny enough.
You don't just want to knock that one out, buddy?
It's never served a purpose, you know. And before I even got out of the military, I asked my chief. I was like, "Hey, I need one class. I need a speech class." That's literally, funny enough, I'm sitting here giving an interview, but I need a speech class to get my aerospace sciences degree, but it just never. It still hasn't proved a purpose, I guess, to this day. But
you take it online.
I could take it online. I could clep it.
I could take it online, bro.
Yeah, you probably could clep a speech class. Yeah,
I did. You know, I tried it in the military. I was like, screw it. You know, I'll just go clep this. Maybe I'll pass it or not. I ended up not passing the speech part, and so, but I never did it again. But it just, for the rest of my story, though, it actually didn't make. It had no benefit. That was the primary reason. It still doesn't to this day. I mean, I think to be able to say I have a degree would be one thing. You know, I think occasionally it crosses my mind. You know, people like, I could assume, you know.
Yeah. I have a master's degree in leadership. I teach self-defense and tactical shooting.
Yeah. Aerospace science. I don't know what.
I mean.
If I was still an air traffic controller, maybe if I wanted to go in management, you know, something like that, maybe it would be something. But now it's, you know, sort of pointless. But it, yeah, so to get back to it, basically, my story is, it's one of the stories where I realized when I was 21, before 21, you know, we started losing people. We lost Paul at 16 to a drunk driving accident. He got thrown out of the bed of the truck we were in. Everybody was drunk in the bed, and somebody driving was drunk, and he got thrown out and got killed.
Were you there?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we were 16. There was like 8 of us in the bed of the truck, and he got thrown out. And so that was the first one. Then my buddy Guido died when I was 17. He died from overdose. That was really the start of the pain pill epidemic. And then we had another Chad then when I was 17. So in like a real short period, we started losing a lot of people to one overdose because the pain pill epidemic started right then. You know, at 16, we had started snorting Lortabs and Xan bars and all these things. And it was just a way of life in New Orleans. And it still is, unfortunately. You know, I can still say today that I still have high school friends that are, you know, they're functioning pill and heroin addicts, you know, occasional crackheads and stuff. And it just,
Sorry, guys.
They were, yeah, and so really there was a culmination of events that happened. At the strip club, you know, I mentioned before, I'm at the club and, you know, usual thing. The one thing a lot of people don't realize that the people you have to worry about in New Orleans are the young kids, like the 10 to 14-year-old kids. Like those are the people you actually have to worry about, more or less.
Why?
Because they're the ones who are trying to make a name for themselves. So they're the ones that will kill you without a thought. And so what had happened was, you know, I had a bunch of little 12 to 14-year-olds that they looked like that I kicked them off the porch, you know, they'll come back and kill your ass tomorrow or whatever. Well, the truth of the matter is they did come back and they killed the other security guard. And at that moment I was like, well, I don't want to die for a doorstep. This is pretty dumb, you know? And so it was, for me, it was like an easy decision. That's one thing I will always say is I'm hard-headed as hell, and I've done a lot of wrong things, but once it clicks that something needs to change, I'm an immediate change person, you know. And it was at that moment, call my boss, Dennis, I'm done. I'm not dying for a doorstep, you know. And so that ended right there. At that moment, I was in a relationship, my high school relationship. There was bad things going on there in the sense that, you know, I had my own cheating story in a sense where I was cheated on. You know, I was going through that kind of stuff and everything. So I wanted to get out of that situation. And also, as a drug dealer, I had gotten a voicemail on my phone that was from a detective that he said his name. I had a detective with this department and everything. You're going to pick this up at this time. Do not. Click. And it was like, in my mind, like, okay, a police officer just identified himself and told me what I'm going to pick up, when I'm going to pick it up. And so that was basically the end of my drug dealing at that point. And what ended up being was my partner in this, the guy who I was going to college with, who came with a pound of weed to school, his mother was dating a cop who had a friend who was working the case and found out that it was the kids of the boyfriend. And so we were fortunate we got a heads up from the police department. Stop, essentially. And so there was just a bunch of different events that happened, and it like got me thinking that I was completely headed down the wrong path, and I wanted so much more from my life. Because, like I said, while I was doing these things, at the same time, I had a functioning landscaping business. I had a functioning fencing business, and I was still doing well in school. And so, like, I knew I was capable of doing many more things. It was just the environment. I kept falling into the bad traps that were offered to me.
You're starting to wake up to the fact that, wait a minute, I actually don't have to be a criminal.
Yeah.
I can be something more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it started to dawn on me. There was about a year that I worked for a land developer who was a big entrepreneur. He built one of the bridges that goes over the Mississippi in New Orleans, and I was helping him. He'd had a stroke, so his family was like, they wanted me out there to watch him, essentially, And so I rode with him in the truck for about a year during this, and I just remember. He told me he was real big on the military. He had gone into the military, then he got out and he started his business, and he started, from finishing washers and dryers to building bridges over the Mississippi. And so it got me really motivated to really get out and do something. And it was during that I met somebody who was buying part of his land that was a retiring Air Force pilot. And he was buying his retirement home. And so he was like, look, join the Air Force, do air traffic control. And it was at this point, I really looked into it and I thought about it. Funny enough, for about a week, the week that he told me do air traffic control, I was like, all right, this is it. And I just literally went there and talked to the Air Force recruiters, didn't talk to anybody else, because I had actually talked to somebody in the Marines and somebody in the Army, and they both said, go to the Air Force. And so...
You're not wrong.
Yeah, for quality of life and everything. Yeah, the Air Force is great for quality of life. That's where they spend more of their budget than any other force.
Yes.
On that, and it shows.
On their people.
On their people.
Right. I always give people that advice too. I'm like, unless you have some dream to be, a SEAL or a Green Beret or a Recon Marine, or like EOD. Because I think Navy's got the best EOD. Yeah. I'm like, join the Air Force. If you don't know what you want to do, join the Air Force. They have the best facilities. It's not a barracks, it's a dorm. It's not a chow hall, it's a dining facility. Yeah. Right? So, yeah.
Yep.
Best looking girls for the guys out there. So, yeah, smart choice on the Air Force there, buddy.
Yeah, it really did. And, so this is what I consider really the second part of my life. Because again, I went into this as I want to be the best that I absolutely can be. I went in there and I tried my absolute hardest in basic training. And I'm not going to say the first week it did not go well, actually, funny enough, because while most people I think were scared of the MTIs yelling in their face and this, that, and the other, I couldn't help but find the comedy in it. Because if you haven't been to basic training, the shit that they say is the most absurd. Like, just half the issue is keeping a straight face. And, literally the first week that I was in there, I got a talking to, because finally my instructor brought me to the side. They're like, look, you get it, okay. These other people, the whole point of breaking them mentally, make them scared, then building them back up. I mean, there's a whole thing, because a lot of people don't go through tough stuff. They don't deal with tough situations. They don't deal with stress. They don't deal with a lot of the shit that the military is going to put you through. So they have to break them to get in, And so it was, I loved it, I got in there. I had another guy, funny enough, from Louisiana also. I met him at the airport before we went. And, him and I, it was almost like we were going to jail. Like, he was the same thing. He was a criminal. He was doing this. And I remember we're sitting there at the airport and we're like, all right, bro, I got you got my back, I got your back, whatever. We're going into this like we're going into a jail cell, before you enter the main public area, you try to find somebody. They'll be like, all right, bro, you got my back, I got your back, okay? Yeah. Just have somebody in there that'll defend you. And so immediately doing that and stuff, go into it. But I tried in the military, I worked my ass off. I on a graduate straight from the start. I did air traffic control. I got that job, and I will never undercut air traffic. It is as difficult as a job they say it is. And I think sheerly because of the fact not only do you have to be able to make quick decisions, a lot of decisions, multitasking, but you also have to retain a lot of information to make those decisions off of and everything. So it's just, for a creative ADHD like Steph, you'd love it. Like the way your mind works, the way you bounce around and everything, where you can multitask and work and have 4 different conversations at the same time and stuff. Like that is what air traffic was. And so I'm like forever thankful that I was fortunate to find that career, because man, there's a lot of, I've had 42 jobs. When I first counted it, it was 38, but then I've 4 that I forgot. So I've had 42 jobs in my life, and most of those before the military, actually. And it was just my favorite job. And so it started in the military. You know, I was fortunate that I got stuck at a training base. I say I got stuck. I chose Columbus, Mississippi, because it was 4 hours from New Orleans. I couldn't get away from New Orleans, and I think that was part of the problem, that even though I was joining the military, I still wanted to stay close, which I don't think it ended up not being the greatest thing. You know, I retained a lot of the friendships and stuff, and man, where to go in the military? I mean, the military itself, there's a lot of stories I've never told people and stuff. So funny enough, I've always told people that I like to learn really fast, and I like to make my mistakes quick and just get them out of the way. And that's only because that seems to be the way my life is. Like, I've done a lot of things that you see a lot of people do in their life. I just did it really quick and really young. And so I think in a fortunate sense that nothing really hurt me overall. And I'm fortunate to find myself in a situation where I'm not held back by my actions of the past necessarily. And just getting into the military, man, my military experience was a lot different than most people's. It was definitely way different from yours. You know, yours was real military. Mine,
well, most people's is way different than mine.
Yeah,
You know?
much different from yours. But just in general, most people, the way they have to deal with the military, mine was a lot different in the sense that I was at an ATC base. I was doing a job where we had crew rest, so we didn't have to do a lot of the military stuff, a lot of the get-togethers, crew rest. You know, I mean, y'all had crew rest and everything. So it's like, it was a different experience. It was almost like we were in a fraternity, which was great because, you know, for 6 years, you know, we would rent multiple apartments by each other and everything. We had whole entire duplexes. It was just a lot of fun. But during that, I definitely made a lot of mistakes. And so I wouldn't say mistake.
How so?
How so? So I did the typical military thing. I got 2 marriages out of the way while I was in the military.
Oh, I'm familiar with that.
So I did the military thing. You know, my daughter was born about 1.5 years after I got into the military, and what ended up happening was, you know, I knew her mother for less than 1 year when she was born, and it was basically, you know, one of those. I met her within a week; she was pregnant, and at that point, you know, I took the stance of, let me just see what works out. You know, I don't really know this woman, and let me get to know her. And at that point, you know, it happened to be, unfortunately for her, she had a bad situation. She was about to lose her home. She didn't have health insurance, and now she was pregnant. And at that moment, the best solution we could think of was, well, if we get married, you keep your house, you get insurance,
Some of those issues go away.
A lot of the issues went away.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why I always say my first marriage was really more of a business arrangement. It was, let's try this out. If we don't work out, in 1 year, we'll get divorced. You know, and our separation date on our divorce paperwork is our anniversary, is our 1-year anniversary. And I may have stuck to that very rigidly, but, you know, I tried it ended up was to be a situation. She's never wanted to leave Columbus, I should say. The military base I was in a town with 27,000 people, little town, nothing goes on there. It's really like a meth capital. And funny enough, Columbus was the wealthiest per capita city in the U.S. up until like 30 years ago.
No.
Yeah, more trust fund babies than anything in the country. It was all slave money is actually what it was, because that area was the Golden Triangle back in the 1800s. So it was the center point where the slave trade actually brought all the slaves into the country and exported them out to the rest of the country. So the primary wealth in the country up until like 1990s was actually in Columbus, Mississippi. So what you see now is like third and fourth generation, just maybe even further than that, further generation, but just scumbag, basically. Never had a job, meth head, has a trust fund, destroyed, that's basically what the city is for the most part, a lot of the people there. And so, needless to say, it was a very fun 6 years. It was a party city. And that's actually, when I left tech school, my instructor said, "Where are you getting stationed?" I said, "Columbus, Mississippi." They said, "Well, I hope you like alcohol and your career is done." That was my parting words from tech school, from the instructors. And legitimately, yeah, Columbus is like a cesspool for just alcohol drinking.
Well, that's almost every military base I've
Very
ever
much
been to.
so. Yeah, very much so.
It's like, I'm going to join the military. I hope you like alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to drink lots of it.
Yeah. But from there, my wife and I, we didn't work out and stuff. And fortunately, though, today we actually have a great relationship. We are able to raise our daughter now, and she has a great life, and she's happy and everything. And so,
How old is she?
She just turned 14 last month.
Nice.
And so, yeah. And so she has a great mother that worked out and everything. And, I think from there, I say I changed my life at 21, but when you change your life, when you are this far down and then you're trying to get to here, there was a lot of years where I just fell back into stuff, and while I was in the military, a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of, occasional selling of drugs, because it was one of those things, the military doesn't pay very well.
No.
And so a lot of people may be surprised, but a lot of people in the military know that when people are drug dealers before the military and they go into the military, chances are they're probably still going to be drug dealers. Mm.
Sometimes life is like Texas two-stepping. 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yeah. And you just fall. And again, it just led me into, I think it was just a continual thing of just falling into the wrong crowd, seeing the people that you continue to associate with, the people that are in the bars, the people doing drugs, those things. I think it just took me a lot of years to get outside of that and to be able to recognize those people prior to even getting to know them. Because I think a lot of times when you're so desensitized to it, you connect with people and you just do. And I think that mentally we connect with people that are on the same wavelengths and are in the same thought process and are seeking the same goals. And that's why I think about 25 that I remember, like a lot of people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if y'all haven't read that book, I'm sure most people have read it. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where, again, at 25, sort of struggling to maintain my own life, but still doing all right in the military, still exceeding in that sense, but not really excelling, not really doing what I knew I could and everything. And so at 25, at this point, I was on my second marriage. The explanation I tell people with this is, after my first wife and we separated, my second wife, I went right back into partying. And my second wife was crazy. My brother's here. He could tell you she was crazy. Before I met her, she had multiple DUIs, multiple arrests for like indecent exposure and stuff.
Winner, champ.
She was winning. I mean, she was beautiful. She was Miss Mississippi beauty pageant and everything. Mm-hmm. Like, she was pretty, but she was pretty crazy at the same time. And you get wrapped up into pretty women that like to have fun and everything. And I just sort of got wrapped into that lifestyle for a little bit. The bar life and EDM got real big on the scene at that point. And we were in a farm town, but we were surrounded by Memphis, Atlanta, New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And so for a couple of years, we just traveled the EDM circuit. And
what's EDM?
Electronic music, raves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, I'm old, man.
Yeah.
You gotta explain this stuff to me.
Yeah, so I was in the military, had a little bit of money, had a little bit of free time, and surrounded by a bunch of cities that were putting on all the big shows and festivals. So for a couple of years there, I basically just
So you were dancing with glow sticks?
I danced.
Nipple
Yeah,
pasties.
yeah. There's a lot of videos I don't admit to. Yeah, I know, a lot of glow sticks and stuff. So yeah, it was. I mean, I won't say it wasn't fun, but it was just again, it was
Not
just
productive, right? It's
just a continuation of a bad lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, nothing good comes from that. The only thing that happens is you drag out whatever life you're semi-maintaining at that point, and it goes downhill from there. You know, we all know if you're not continuously improving, well, if you think you're just stagnant, you're declining.
You're backsliding, yeah.
You're backsliding, you know. And I got to a point, you know, I was in that marriage, and there was just you know, about 24, I really tried to make a change again, you know, and I stopped trying to party as much. My wife, at the point, she was complete alcoholic. Like there was, you know, she wouldn't come to bed for weeks at a time because she either wouldn't come back from the bar or she'd be out on the couch at night with her bottle of Jaeger, just sitting there drinking until she passed out, you know, in the morning. I go move the bottle from her and stuff, you know, and she's 26 years old at this point. And so I'm, you know, air traffic controller in the military doing this, and my wife's like blackout drunk at 9 a.m. in the morning on the couch. Like it's a regular thing. And truthfully, it's one of those things where like we don't see it, and we almost defend the situations we're in because, you know, for a while there, like I started to lose friends, and it was because they just didn't want to be around my crazy wife is what it was, you know, and I, like an idiot, stuck around for a long time, you know, putting her through school and trying to like help her out to get her productive and stuff. And eventually, you know, it's just one of those things that you realize you can't change people.
Or save them if they don't want to be saved.
Yes. Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah. And so realistically, at 25 was really the turning point where I stopped trying to save other people, and I started just trying to save myself more than anything, because I saw that I could not re-enlist. So I never intended to re-enlist because the 4-year enlistment was the option, and I was 27 at this point. And the way that the FAA works with air traffic control is you have to be under 31 to re-enlist. And so I already knew as soon as I found that
When
out.
do you have to be under 31 to re-enlist?
So the FAA puts an age restriction
To be air traffic control?
To be air traffic control. You have to be under 31 when you apply, or the day you're hired, you have to be under 31. And so I was 27 in 3 months when my 6 years was ended with the Air Force. So I had to get out because a 4-year enlistment would put me over 31. So I never intended to re-enlist at that point.
Because you wanted to stay as an air traffic controller.
I wanted to switch to civilian side.
Yeah, okay. All
Is
right.
what the primary, you know.
So staying in, re-enlisting, you would have got out and you wouldn't have been able to become an air traffic controller. You would have had to commit to the Air Force the rest
I'd have
of the
been stuck in
time.
the Air Force.
You would have been
Yes.
stuck. Okay, so that's why you made that choice. Check.
Yes. Yeah. So going into this, I realized real soon that my Air Force career was going to be 6 years just because of my age and the way it was going to play out. So I knew that immediately, is before I even got out, I'd be applying for contracting jobs. I knew I'd have to do that because the application period at that point was 4 years. Once you applied for the FAA, it was about a 3 to 4 year turnaround to get hired. And so I expected to be in Afghanistan or Iraq for 3 to 4 years following getting out of the military. And so what ended up happening was I got out of the military in 2015, honorable discharge. You know, my overall, like I did well in the military. My service records reflect, you know, I was a sergeant when I got out. I ran a crew of air traffic controllers. I was a watch supervisor. And so as far as my 6-year career went, I excelled in what I did, you know, and maintained it that way. And yeah, from there, you know, I did a brief stint in in Afghanistan with Midwest Contracting. Nothing real serious there. I mean, a lot of people have been to Afghanistan. I went there, we had a couple incoming orders, and I left 3 months later. That was basically the gist of it. You know, I was fortunate. The FAA did an emergency hire because of their manning issues, which have been continual for decades, and they did a direct to the facility. So instead of, which is the same one actually Mickey got on, that's how we both got hired. instead of the multi-year hiring process, they said direct to the facility, start day one, skip the schoolhouse, skip everything, and you're at a facility. And so it was just a blessing that, I went to Afghanistan expecting 3 to 4 years. And within 2 months, I had an offer letter that said, you need to be here in 3 days to take a drug test. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this plan's, immediately changed. And
Accelerated.
yeah. And it's like I said, I've just gotten so lucky in my career in that sense. Like as far as the air traffic control went, I just got lucky and I went to the busiest base in the Air Force. I got the best experience in that sense. Because of that, I was immediately picked up from the military to do contracting because every person from that base had done excellent. So I was an immediate hire because hundreds of people are applying. And there's 30 spots. And just got fortunate in that. And then I got selected for the busiest facility in the FAA as far as controllers are, as far as the controller side of air traffic and everything. And so my air traffic career has just gotten lucky that I've gotten the busiest to the best training the whole way through. And which just, it means it was air traffic control. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot to it. I honestly did love the job for a lot of years. And I did it for 14 years. And I think that, anybody out there that's thinking of a job, that's one of those jobs that I tell people because all you need is a high school degree. Like if you have a high school degree, you can become an air traffic controller. You're eligible. U.S. citizen high school degree, and they put bids out every 6 months.
How much were you making?
When I left there, I think my last year I cleared like 225 or something. But controllers there, yeah, in air traffic control in the big facilities, the guys now, especially with all the overtime, they can clear 400,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah,
I had no clue.
Yeah, you can make good money. When I was there, yeah, when you first fully get checked out and you work overtime and everything, you can easily break 200,000 starting out. And it's just, yeah, so as far as the career goes, and you get so much, it's federal employment. You get all the benefits. You have 6.5 weeks of vacation a year,
Wow.
Like it's sort of absurd compared to the public sector, like the benefits of it. But that's just, federal employees. They get a lot of benefits, and it,
Hopefully not too much longer with those.
I will say this, and this is a whole nother.
Hopefully we don't shit can the air traffic controllers. So I think we need those guys. But
it's the one thing I will say is like all federal employee jobs, the unions are, and I'll probably catch flack for this because a lot of people love the unions and stuff, but I'm really not a big fan of the unions in all sense of it. Like they made air traffic more complicated than it had to be. So with the union there, you have 90 days to enroll in the FAA union. And the first year as a federal employee, you are fireable for any offense. It's a probationary period. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, for the first year, you can't protect me anyway. For 90 days, I don't have to pay an enrollment fee. So for 90 days, if I don't pay your monthly fee, that saves me like $350 in fees if I just wait 90 days.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't go over well. Like every day they were like, did you sign up yet? Did you sign up yet? Did you, like managers, everybody. Like it was like constant pressure for like 2 weeks. Join the union,
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, hey, if everybody will stop, just shut up. Leave me alone,
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of unions either. I never had to deal with one until I was a firefighter.
Yeah.
And then on San Diego Fire, I had to join the union, or we were heavily pressured to join the union. When I was in the academy, I joined it. They never did anything for us other than take our money. They eventually got a raise after I left. But here was the part that really made me tell the union to go fuck itself. Was during COVID, we were at a 900 firefighter department, and about 100 to 150 of us didn't want to get the vaccine. And we asked the union to fight for us, right? Like, hey, we don't want to get this. I don't want to get this experimental drug.
Yeah, like 15%.
Yeah, and the union was like, basically told us to go fuck ourselves, that they were siding with the city. I'm like, what the hell have I paid all these fucking dues for? Like, this is honestly, literally something you should be fighting on my behalf for, and I just got told to go fuck myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
needless to say, I didn't stay in the Union much longer, or stay a firefighter much longer, actually, after that, and
Yeah.
for the city of San Diego, which is a great city and a great department, and,
Yeah.
you know, lots of great friends there and lots of good people.
Yeah.
But, man, that really brought out the worst,
It did.
you know. So, yeah, not to get too much off topic, but I hear you with unions, and I haven't been. To me, it doesn't seem like they ever really pan out to be what they claim to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then they always support the candidate I don't like.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse that I'm sure you can account to unions being involved. And I can say that because I mean I benefited from it for a long time as a union employee in the federal government. So I saw both sides of it. But at the end of the day, I just personally I didn't like it. And it actually, so to give you so get more on top here with the air traffic control here, just to finish up that, you know, I left the overseas contracting, came here to Dallas in 2015. And so 2015, I arrived in Dallas, and at that point, I was on a mission basically to change my life for the better. Like, I became a hermit. I only worked out. You know, it's my first year in DFW, and I just basically worked my ass off to try and become the best controller that I possibly could. And because, I mean, this was the busiest facility in the FAA, and we had a lot of people who didn't want us to be there because we had a lot of old, crusty controllers that had worked their way through the system. You're supposed to start at a small facility. You're supposed to make your 70,000, then you make your 100,000. You work your way up. So 10 years into your career, you get to the big money. That's the way it's supposed to work in their mind. But we got thrown straight into the big money from day one. And so they took that as, actually, specifically in my situation, my trainer said to me day one, he looked at me and he says, look, it's nothing against you, but the FAA needs to learn they have to stop doing this shit, so I need to teach them a lesson. And he basically saying, I'm going to fail you because if you fail out of training, then you're just fired. And then essentially I'm careerless with no skills other than air traffic control.
That's super fucked up, and you probably had a lawsuit on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Like, I mean, day one, the guy tells you he's going to fail you.
Yeah.
That's a lawsuit all day long.
Yeah.
He didn't tell you that, did he?
No, fortunately, I was training with other people, and the other people that were training me did not have that bias, and they were like, yeah, he's a good trainee and stuff. And so my manager, within a month, and fortunately also, again, Mickey comes to the store. Mickey talked to Cooksey and was like, dude, Gordy's not a bad controller, I can promise you. And, you know, he evaluated me, and they were like, okay, so your trainer, I forget what the guy's name was now, but he just wasn't allowed to train people from there out. Like, he was just off limits for training, because he basically said, any person that you give me, I'm going to fail. And so I ended up getting, yeah. Yeah, and so, but, you know,
What an asset to the department.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and he's just one of the old crusties that wanted to protect his job, and he wanted to protect his overtime, and it was just, that's what was controlling the FAA and the union at that point.
They're in every career.
Yes. Yeah. But fortunately, you know, I've always, anything that I've tried at, I've excelled at, and I was able to, you know, overcome that look, and I was able to excel in my training there and got qualified and stuff. And within, 2 years, I got certified in the FAA, which 2 years, I know these times don't make a lot of sense, but a lot of people don't realize or don't know that as an air traffic controller, every time you go to a new facility, you start training over. Because while the rules of separation and stuff are the same for the most part, each facility has a different airspace. There's different environments. There's different cities. There are different airports, approach plates. There's so many different parameters that are in play that it's a complete different thing.
They're all unique.
They're all unique. And so your process of when you get there is you learn how to control traffic at that airspace. Mm-hmm. And so my first 2.5 years in the FAA was that I did well. I had a brief period actually where I tried to move back to New Orleans. This is sort of skipping ahead. I tried to move back to New Orleans because I thought it was always my goal to move back to New Orleans again, but it would be different because now I have money, now I make money, and and it just wasn't. Like, I moved back to New Orleans. I bought an apartment building to house hack and live in it. And I realized within a month that everybody was just living in bars. I was afraid to go to friends' houses because they had lots of drugs still in their house. So every time I was in the homes, I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, if the house gets raided right now, I'm a federal employee sitting here in this drug house. You know, what's going to happen to me? You know, and it just real quickly, I just realized that that was a mistake. Ever moving back to New Orleans. That was in 2019. Actually, I moved back to New Orleans for 4 months. Found out real quickly it was a bad move. Nothing had changed. I was straight back into the bars. And so I immediately withdrew from training, came back to DFW and everything. Fortunately, I had bought an apartment building, so I didn't have to pay for 2 places to live in. You know, it was doing its thing. And I think, so really sort of wrapping this up into more of where I am today, so far all of what I've told you, and I know it sounds like a jumbled mess because that's the way it feels like it is when I'm speaking it and everything, but it, up until this point in my life, really age 30, I was just enjoying life too much. I was still out partying. I was living in uptown Dallas. I was making money. I was spending thousands of dollars a week at the bar just on alcohol and stuff. And I was not headed in the right direction still. You know, I was progressing in the sense that my career was doing well, but as an individual, I was not doing well. You know, and really the event that changed it all for me was in 2018. Up until this point, I had been dating a woman that was supposed to leave the state in a few months when we started dating. It was just supposed to be a fling for a little bit. She ended up sticking around and stuff, and it turned into like a 1.5-year relationship. And then during this whole period, like, we were enjoying our life. We were fine dining in uptown, and I was, you know, living a lavish life and taking vacations and spending money and spending, you know, not doing anything productive in a sense. I was just enjoying the fruits of my labor from working a lot of overtime. And it was at that point that, you know, I recognized that, and I, again, just really made an emphasis I wanted to improve myself. And that is when I had done my training in air traffic, so I had free time and stuff. So I went in and I got my realtor's license here in Texas. I went and got certified. I went and started working for Keller Williams uptown location while I was an air traffic controller also, just to get my foot in the door on real estate. I figured the best way to learn real estate was to get into real estate, you know, and I wanted to meet investors. I wanted to learn about this and stuff. And so during this whole phase, what ended up happening was, you know, I was really focused on improving myself. And I recognized that this relationship, while fun, she had no understanding of work or anything. She had, you know, her previous relationships were, you know, an investment guy, you know, made big money in Dallas. Before that, it was a cardiologist. And so she had always been just given everything. She was from Brazil. A person had moved her from Brazil to Spain. Then another guy had moved her to Dallas. And so I was the third guy that had met her and, you know, was sort of in essence supporting a lifestyle in essence. And at that point, you know, I realized, you know, she was dealing with like some medical issues and stuff. And I just made a point to end the relationship because I knew that I would never retire from air traffic early and work for myself, which was my goal, if I was in this relationship. I knew it was holding me back. I knew it was just putting me in bars. I knew it was just making me not live a life that I wanted to. And so I made that choice and separated with her, ended up moving her to Miami and then moving her to Los Angeles because she couldn't sign for an apartment even because she'd never had a job in the U.S. You know, and this stupidity on my part, you know, supplying these things and stuff like that and everything. And what ended up happening, and this, you know, threw me for a loop for a lot of years, was she, we were talking again and we had taken a vacation right before this and she came to Dallas to see me. and she was supposed to be driving back from Dallas over the next couple days. And, I had made a point not to check on her because I wanted her to understand that the relationship wasn't going anywhere and that it was nice to go on a vacation and do these things. But I was certain that I was more interested in improving myself, becoming an entrepreneur, retiring from the FAA, doing these things. And I knew it wasn't possible with our lifestyle, our relationship and everything. And, sadly enough, instead of leaving Dallas, which, for 3 days she played the part of, I'm driving and stuff like that, she ended up not. And she committed suicide at a hotel here in Dallas. And so,
Wow.
yeah, like, yeah, she had been dealing with some stuff and everything. And so it was just that, I think it threw me for a loop for a lot of years because, a big part of me blamed myself because I knew that I ended something that she was reliant on to seek improving myself or the way I rationalized it and everything. And so the thought of, man, if I just would have stayed with her, maybe she would have killed herself, and you have those thoughts and everything. And
I hope you've moved past that.
It took me some time.
That's always an individual choice. That's never anyone else's fault.
Permanent solution to a temporary problem, right?
Yeah, and it just, it was a real shitty situation in the fact that she didn't have any family in this country either. And so what ended up happening was her family ended up contacting me. I had to file all the paperwork. I had to get her cremated. I had to ship her back to Brazil to her family. I had to take possession of her possessions. I had to sell everything. I had to create accounts. I had to do.
That's rough, man.
Months of stuff. Oh my God, I remember one of the weirdest things. I remember I called my mom and I'm driving and then she, my girlfriend's ashes are in the box next to me and I'm like, Mom, this is just weird. I'll be honest with you, I just need to call somebody right now because I got a box next to me that I just don't even know what to think about. And I appreciate, Mickey. Funny enough, you can always trust Mickey. Mickey waited 24 hours. He calls me, he's like, hey, bruh, she's dead. Get the fuck over it. And hung up.
That's Mickey for sure.
And I appreciate it.
That's a good friend right there.
Yeah, it put a laugh in my face and everything, and it just, I think though it was at that moment that it was one of those things that I told myself. I was like, you made a choice, whether or not, I think at that point I did blame myself, and it took me a lot of years not to blame myself. But at that point, I basically took it as, well, you've made a decision to improve yourself that has caused, possibly caused the loss of life of somebody else. So now you have no option but to succeed, because there's already been a loss in this, in a sense.
Man, and there's no guarantee she wouldn't have done that anyways.
Yeah.
Right? If people are capable of that, then they're capable of that anyways, regardless whether you've chosen to take care of her or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what if you had? And then you go further down the road. And then what if you actually fall in love with her and then she did that?
Yeah.
I mean, how much more fucked up would you be? In a way, she did you a favor.
Yeah.
Or kids.
Yeah. And I ended up, eventually I realized, because I did recognize, we went to dinner the last night we were together, and I knew something was off. And I asked her, I was like, you're not thinking of hurting yourself. I legitimately asked her, and she just sort of chuckled and was like, that was it. And I was like, okay, I'm just saying you're a little off from what you normally are right now, so what's going on with you and everything. And it just, but then I found out more information too, that she had planned this. She'd already gotten wills made. There were already letters. She had 6 different ways of killing herself essentially in that hotel room, and I never actually even picked up the paper that said cause of death, because I was like, what's the point, But it was, it was one of those things where there was nothing I could have done. And I know that because she had already told her brothers what she was going to do. She had told her family she was going to commit suicide. Yeah. And so the only person she hadn't told was me. She had just came to see me in the end, I guess.
One last time.
Yeah, one last time. And then I got stuck with doing all the stuff, at the end. I don't know if you're playing that part or she thought about it. But there was nothing. You just have to recognize that people, yeah, like you said, she would have done that regardless. She had it planned. There was nothing I can do. I asked the questions, and she was intent upon it, you know. And it's just one of those things. And you know, from that literally, that was since then. That was 2018. Like I said, shortly after that, I moved to New Orleans. Found out real quickly that New Orleans was still a shithole. If anybody's wondering, there's still a lot of drunks. There's still not a lot of good things going on. And so figured that out real quick, moved back. And since then, I guess the next explanation is what ended up happening is, so nowadays, y'all know me as, you know, I do social media. We're filming in my personal training facility that my wife and I operate and stuff. And so now I'm running businesses. I'm no longer doing air traffic. And so to give, you know, an overview of how I got to that, what ended up happening was the FAA, they got real adamant about, you know, they wanted veterans to turn in what their disabilities were. And up until a certain point, like, we didn't fill out the paperwork. Like, we had a secretary that did our yearly, as controllers, you do a yearly physical. You are evaluated just like a pilot. You have to be able to see. You have to be able to hear. You know, you function well as a human just so you can do the job. And they always just had a secretary that filled out all the other stuff, and you just went to the appointment. Well, when COVID happened, that secretary was no longer there. And so we actually learned at that point that part of it, they're like, okay, so the FAA, we want you to submit all your VA disabilities and stuff. And so at first there was like a lot of people were like, well, you know, a lot of pilots, a lot of controllers and stuff, they have disabilities that they cannot maintain a clearance with. And so what ends up happening is a lot of people end up hiding their injuries from the military because they can't do both.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
That's like every SEAL. You hide every injury until the year before you get out, and then you're trying to scramble.
Yeah.
Like,
you claim everything.
Yeah, well, that's it. You hide your injuries for an entire career because you still want to operate, and then that last year you're like, oh crap.
Let's get punched up.
You know, I've hid this stuff for all of these years because I wanted to operate. Now I got to try to find medical paperwork to support it.
Yep.
Luckily for me, the X-rays and MRIs showed it all.
Yeah.
So, all the previous breaks and joint tissue damage. So.
Yeah. And so and actually it's a good point for actually a lot of veterans, and I hope to out in the future that to actually have more discussions on this. In that while I was in the FAA, we were actually able to work together with a lot of other veterans and help other veterans to get their disability ratings, to file stuff. And
so what kind of injuries would an air traffic controller acquire?
You know, it's funny enough. Do you know what the #1 reason for medical retirement in the military is?
I can assume back pain.
Back and ankle, that kind of. But the actual reason for them is intramural sports.
Oh.
And so a lot of my injuries, first off,
free pickleball accident.
Yeah,
No,
let me start by saying that I was never in combat. Okay, I've been to Afghanistan, I've been on a base, and that's about the extent of it. My military career, like I said, was more associated with a fraternity than it was the standard military. It was like I went to college, is what it seemed like.
And that's why people love the Air Force.
Yeah, it was great. It really was. You know, it was a lot of fun. And so a lot of mine were basically, you know, I have multiple ruptured discs in middle back, upper back, lower back. I've broken both my wrists while I was in. I broke my arm while I was in. Both patellar tendonitis were ruptured. Both ankles I've torn tendons in. I just have a lot of joint issues the whole way up.
You sound like Mr. Glass.
Yeah, lots of joint stuff. And so, and it just, from that though, the thing that a lot of veterans don't realize, and it's something that I think the VA in a sense almost tries to hide, is that, I forget the year, I think it was 2019, but the VA made pain a disability. And prior to that, pain was not a disability. It was not something you could get, compensation for.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I retired in 2016.
Yeah. So but they don't classify it as pain. They classify it in different ways, but they never name it as pain. And so there's, like mine, SSD, somatic symptom disorder, is somatic symptom disorder is chronic pain, is what it's classified as. And so they had to do that because Gulf War syndrome is essentially unexplained constant pain. And so they were giving Gulf War syndrome people thing for pain, but nobody else had disability for pain. And so that's what changed in 2019, I believe. And so from that, we were fortunate that we had a guy that had hired an attorney, and he had the exact same ruptured disc, L4, L5, C, whatever it is. We had the exact same things, and his paperwork went through, and it was like, hey, you just filed, like, you have the same injuries. Your MRIs are the same. And so same actually for Mickey too. His were the same. We had a bunch of everybody's got a back problem. Everybody's got a ruptured disc. You do enough sports, you probably got a ruptured disc. You just probably don't feel it yet. I think it's those things. Yeah. I think
once you get older, you're gonna feel a lot more, buddy.
Yeah, they just start to appear.
Yeah.
And eventually that's
Hope it stays out for a little bit.
You get out of bed and you're like, how did I hurt myself more in my sleep?
Yeah.
I already feel that.
Yeah.
I didn't go to bed with this. Now this hurts.
Yeah. My wife knows. I've woken up and I said within 30 minutes, take me to the emergency room. I'm not even dealing with this. I'm just take me to the emergency room because I can't walk right now. Just, you throw a disc out in the middle of the night while you're sleeping and you wake up and you're like, And so unfortunately due to that, unfortunately I severely, that year, 2019, I think I went to the emergency room 4 times. I had to be brought to the emergency room. Let's be honest, a lot of it, the first 2 times were weightlifting, and then from there it was just, I picked up a piece of trash, back went out. From there it was just, it's something that if I just do something wrong, it's part of life. Now you have injury, you learn how not to lean over, you learn when to feel it, you know how to feel it eventually. And so because of that, what ended up happening was I filed for the disability and I ended up getting 100% disability. Unfortunately, though, chronic pain with the VA is not classified as a physical ailment. It's classified as a mental ailment. And so it's considered a mental disorder, sort of like an anxiety disorder, because it's chronic pain, and pain we interpret in our mind. It's not really physical, it's in our mind. And so because of that, and myself and about 11 other controllers, we just helped each other, basically, is what happened. Yeah. We had the same injuries, we helped each other, and we all got the same we all got the same disabilities, because that's just what it was. And so
you have disability from the VA?
Yeah, I'm 100% disabled from the VA. And so what ended up happening was once I got that disability, like I immediately, I knew what was going to happen. I turned in the paperwork to the FAA, and they give you 2 options. You can retire medically, or you can take an HR job. And something about government HR desk work for the next 22 years of my career seemed horrible. And so it was just, it was not a choice, and truthfully too, though, my entire story, I've always done entrepreneurial things. I've always tried to make money on the outside. I've always been seeking other avenues and stuff. So I knew if I can't get out with multiple passive incomes and do something, then I don't deserve to succeed. At that point, it's my own failure if I fail.
Oh, you finally started taking some accountability.
Huh? Yeah, and
quite different than your childhood. Also.
Yes, yeah, primarily.
Good for you.
Yeah, and that's what it's just, and since then, I think my biggest blessing, honestly, has been to be fortunate enough to be around people like our friend Mickey, and I know I bring him back to this a lot, but truthfully, he was my first experience into somebody whose mindset is so determined into achieving. He's such a strategic thinker and so tactical in it that just a decade observing him and seeing like, well, he just doesn't quit. He's always there. He's always willing to put the work in. He's always, and it's just one of those things. As my best friend, I was just like, well, the worst thing that, I just have to emulate those social skills. And the worst thing that's going to happen is I hopefully am in a similar place that he is, in a sense. And I think that's when it started to dawn on me that I started to see that looking back at the people in New Orleans and looking back at how I was growing up and looking back at my parents and looking back at all these things and recognizing the difference in the relationships and the conversations that are had between ourselves and every other person is such a different level of thinking that it's only apparent to me now after getting outside of that and to, educating myself and to improving myself, being so intent on just improving myself day in and day out and making it my goal that every day that I want to be 1% better. I want to make sure that my skills, I want to focus on specific skills. I want to improve, not in every different direction, but in specific strategic directions which help me to what I want to achieve in the future. And so my biggest blessing is that I've been allowed and lucky enough to have had these individuals around me to where I can hold myself accountable. Because the truth of the matter is, if I don't hold myself accountable, well, the group will hold you accountable because you won't be in the group. And that's just the way it is because
Self-vetting.
It is. And I think that every person that is trying to achieve the most out of life has the right and the opportunity, or has the right to choose who's around them. And if people are not there to push them, are not there to help their mental thought, are not there to improve them and stuff, and if they're just detracting, that a lot of those times, doesn't mean you have to completely cut people out of your life, but to go to those people for opinions and to try to surround yourself constantly with those people, it can drain on you more than I think most people recognize. And I think that's just something that it's hard to recognize because you have to be able to look at your own friends, your own family, and yourself and be like, wow, my train of thought is fucked up. Like, I am not going down the right path. I am not making the right choices. I'm not doing the right things.
It's very hard to be self-motivated. Those are rare individuals, that are self-motivated. They can pick themselves up out of things and not have to be surrounded by other positive influences.
Yeah.
I've got this saying, I think good people always find each other. They're like magnets.
Yeah.
But bad people do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your point to, hey, I need to choose who I'm around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are the magnets that I'm going to be drawn to?
Yeah.
Right? Is it going to be other high achieving people or people who I want to emulate and be like?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be people that drag me down?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's good on you recognizing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. That's like I mentioned earlier. I was the sermon this morning, and just the pastor going over like the lack of discipline and how that environment it creates the individual you are, and how important it is just surround yourself. And that's why that is a point nowadays that like I try to impress upon people more than anything, is because for literally still at this point, the majority of my life still at this point has been associated with criminal activity and bad choices and those trains of thought. And it's taken me, it's just been in the last 10 years that I've really started to escape that mindset and then really start to recognize, and I know each one of y'all understands exactly what I mean by, you can talk to a person and the words that they use, you recognize their train of thought. You can recognize how they think. You can recognize if they're a victim. You can recognize if they're willing to put in hard work. You can recognize all these
Victim
things.
mentality, yeah.
Yeah, you can pick that up immediately. And I think that's only because a lot of it has to do with once you get yourself out of that mindset or you hold yourself accountable to a certain mindset, you recognize it immediately because you're not giving people benefit of the doubt. Because you don't give yourself the benefit of the doubt.
It's different, right? It's like a puzzle piece doesn't fit.
Yeah.
That's always how I feel. Like when I speak to people with a weak mindset, or especially with a victim mentality, it almost feels like I'm getting stained.
Yeah.
I know that sounds bad, but it feels like, hey, I really don't want you around me.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with mindset things with my son right now, right? He's turning 13, and I was joking around with him the other day, but he started whining, and he uses kind of this whiny, weak voice sometimes, and he's like, "Mur, mur, mur," and I hate it when he does that. And so he started doing that a little bit, started kind of feeling sorry for himself and uses this weak voice, and I was like, "Son, stop that. Your weakness is offending my masculinity." And he's like, "What?" And he started laughing, but I broke him out of it.
Yeah.
That's the role of the father, though, right?
But I broke him out of that, and I did it with humor, but I also told him, like, hey, weakness offends masculinity.
Yeah.
It offends manliness,
Yeah.
100%.
right? Like, I don't want to be around that. I hate it.
Yeah.
I find it disgusting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it bothers me when I see it.
Yeah.
It bothers me when I see it in him, and I'm going to get it out of him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's my job.
It is
You
your
know.
job.
So
Yeah.
you know, and Gordy, all those things you're talking about, that criminal mindset and being that, what is it really? It's victimhood. It's cowardice. It's weakness.
Yeah.
It's not taking accountability.
Yeah.
And it's
Shifting blame to others and other things and externals.
right.
Yeah.
Always our fault, right?
And
That's what I say.
it's taking and feeding off weak people
Yeah.
too as well, right?
Yeah.
It's being a
You're
predator
taking advantage of people.
in a way. It's not being a protector. It's being more of a predator.
Yeah.
You know, off other weak people because you're weak yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and you snapped out of that, man.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. It sounds
Yeah.
like you had a good influence with Mickey, you know,
Yeah.
and you had some other positive good
Yeah.
influences in your life. And now, since you've been now where you're at now, you've been on both sides of that fence.
Yeah.
And now you can help others.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what this podcast is about, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's, like I said from the beginning of this, completely uncomfortable talking about it, you know, because like I said, it's not a representation of who I am now or who I strive to be and everything, but it is a part of my story. And I take it, you know, from now I think that there are millions of people that are out there struggling with the same thing, whether it just be the mindset, the bad situation, bad opportunities and stuff. And it's, I think where there, like I say, where there's a will, there's a way. If you want out bad, good, hard enough, you just have to try. And, you know, I know that a lot of people, depends on their starting point. You know, it may be a lot harder for some people than other people. But at the end of the day, you work hard enough, you provide enough value for other people, and you can work your way out of a lot of different situations. And it's just believing in yourself and changing your mindsets and stuff. And so it, you know, this leads me to now, and, you know, honestly, I look forward more to life now than at any other point because I recognize the whirlwinds of energy that have been created and the people working with and the ideas working on and the future that I will die in working on. And, you know, I will die working on my dreams, you know, and I'm just not willing to give up. And, you know, so I look forward so much to it. And, you know, the next couple of years to come, just to give you a little brief breakdown of my current thing, you know, y'all know we work together with the social media and stuff. And so my thought here in this, you know, after getting out of the FAA was, you know, I need to create skills. Skills are what make money in this world, in my opinion. Your application of skills and the right clients and everything. And so I realized that social media is not going away. And so that's why I realized that, you know, I have dozens and dozens of business plans that I've been developing for years. And I recognize that all of these plans are going to start with media. And so that's why I knew that media, okay, the first skill, if it takes me 2 or 3 years to develop a media company, at the end of the day, I can develop something which will there in turn help out the rest of my business things. And so that's, you know, how we started working together and stuff. And so, but there's a part of my story, you know, y'all know that side, but there's the secondary part, which a lot of people don't know about is I'm fortunate now I have an amazing wife. And so we got married, I guess, 2.5 years ago.
Congrats.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, we just celebrated 6 years together this week and stuff.
I happen to have an amazing wife too.
Yep.
And we just taking her to dinner tonight. Yesterday was our 17-year anniversary.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I got lucky. I found her 21 years ago, or she found me. But
yeah. See,
I was
and the
smart enough to
importance.
stay with her.
Yeah, and I think so. You've shown, you know, the importance of a good relationship. I think that's the most important relationship, first off, we can have in our life. Our significant other, who we spend the majority of time with.
The vertical one first, and then you get the other one right.
Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So,
Quick shout out to our Lord and Savior.
yes. As far as on Earth, the humans
Yes.
that are involved.
Agreed.
The wife, you know,
Agreed.
because that can be your downfall. If she wants to party and go hard, you're going to party and go hard.
Yeah.
It's a business partnership, right?
Yeah, it is.
way.
It's completely a business partnership. And that's why I'm so lucky to have a wife that entertains my insanity and my, you know, plans and everything. And, you know, that's, she's from the country of Panama, and she, you know, has her own story herself. She grew up very poor and like tin house, like multiple, you know, the family's in a little house. It's all poor. But though on an opportunity side of that, the last couple of years we've spent building our networks down in Panama and stuff. And so it is our goal to, you know, get down there using, you know, the content, the social media business we're creating here and everything to get down there. And she's got huge amounts of family. And I don't know if you know this, but the average income in Panama is about $1.50 an hour. And so there's a lot of opportunity in Panama in the sense of it's the fastest growing economy in the world.
Wow.
And, well, no, sorry, not the world. In Latin America, it's the fastest growing economy. And so that's been, you know, since we're fortunate now to be able to work for our own businesses and stuff and to grow these, that's been our goal to get down there and to, she's got a huge family and just really develop businesses and stuff and to employ as many people down there as possible. And so we have a lot of, you know, developments down there, housing developments, land down there, roof purchase and stuff. And we're working on building our network in Central America because the entrance fee to Central or Latin America is a lot cheaper than the U.S.
Well, and
So-
you know, I'm sure you're keeping your eye on BlackRock
Yeah.
buying the canal.
Yeah. Yes,
So that
I've been
could
paying
be-
close attention.
Yeah, yeah. Get it out of China's hands. That'd be
Yep.
awesome,
Yeah, I
especially
would-
since we built it.
Yeah, I would love to see U.S. investment in Panama. That would, it's a great country. They love Americans. Unlike a lot of countries nowadays, we've been pissing people off. Panama loves Americans. You know, it's a great country and everything. So it's just, you know, I look forward to the things that we're doing here. I look forward to the business ventures. I look forward to the travel. I look forward to seeing all the competitions that hopefully we're going to see this year coming from you. And,
Yeah.
you know, just my world, I'm fortunate enough, is surrounded by individuals that are high level, high achieving, and with that just comes a lot of activity in life. I think the more high achieving you are, it just seems to be the more people that are surrounding you and the more things that you're available to do, the more opportunity. And I mean, like I said, I look forward to this third phase of life more than anything because I'm just ready to put the work in and just go to town on it, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're pressing forward, when you're moving forward, you have goals, right? And your goals are altruistic, you know?
Yeah.
And they help you, but they also help others, right?
Yeah.
Life starts to become a joy.
It does. It
You know?
does. Yeah. You know, I have no problem. God, did I tell him this? I don't. So again, looking back, I was looking at our buddy here one day. I was sitting there, and I think I told somebody this that, you know, I like to evaluate people. I like to, you know, think about what they're doing in their life, how that plays out and stuff. And one of the biggest things that I recognize from highly successful people is that they have an abundance of value to give to other people, whether that's just in knowledge, advice, time when available. You know, it's just successful people always are giving away value to other people, and it brings people into their network because they want to receive the value. And so that you know, and I've observed so many people around me that I just see the value. I see the value you provide to people training. I see the value you provide, and it motivates me to equip myself with the best set of skills that I possibly can and provide as much value to my network as possible. Because at the end of the day, I mean, that's how as far as I can tell, the best way to a successful life is just really try to provide value to people. And that is for sure the only reason why I'm on here at the moment. You know, I really hope that from this show that, I mean, I know personally that I've had so many life-altering thoughts and concepts just from something that I heard on a show that I was able to relate to that made sense in the moment. And I may have heard it time and time again before that, but it connected this time because the story with it connected with me. And, so I'm hoping in that all of our stories and all of our situations is that we truly can provide as much value for as many people as possible in whatever way that we possibly can. And that is the only thing I hope from this show. That's my primary thing. And I think that if we can do that to the best of our ability, if we can truly provide value, then by the sense of it, in a normal sense of success, we will be inevitably successful because we truly provide value.
Absolutely, right? I mean, the Patriot Point Show will help build that social media company for you, right? If we're successful here, right? It'll help Stefan in his new gym, right? Get BJJ students in there, right? It'll help me on the American Warrior combative side, right? Teaching people how to shoot and defend themselves, protect their homes and their families, right? So absolutely, it would build everyone up.
Yep. Yeah, and so it's an accountability thing. That's why I appreciate y'all. Please y'all have me on here and everything, because in my mind,
we had a choice.
I mean,
that's a joke. That's a joke, Alex.
At the end of the day, I honestly can say that like there's a lot of things like the monkey brain kicks in, and you want to get lazy and you don't want to do things, and all I think about is I think about y'all, and I think about if they were here to judge me at this moment. Ain't no way in hell I'd be not doing what I need to do. Like if somebody's eyes are on me, and so I do the best I can. I try to do is I try to always imagine. And, Nate, I've told you, he's been sort of a mentor to me.
Love Nate, man.
And everything, and it's because Nate's superpower is the dude just doesn't quit. He's a dog. He just does not quit.
Dog.
And I love that about him. And it's just one of those things. It's like, I make a point to tell him that I'm going to do stuff and that I'm going to do these things because I don't have the balls to go back to him and tell him I didn't do it. So it is better just to do it.
Oh, man, it's great to have people like that in your life. It's great to have people that you're like, man, I want to do this just because I don't want to disappoint this person. That's a person you truly respect, you truly admire, and you truly look up to. Right? That's awesome to have people like that in your life, man. Cherish that.
And that's I mean, that in itself is a point I think a lot of people should take a note of, is that you should have mentors in life. You should have people that are in situations that you want to get to, because it's only through that can you really open up your reality to what's possible. If you're hearing the same poor-minded stuff over and over, well, that's your reality. And it's not till you get outside of that you can really understand the world has so many more opportunities. Manifestation is real. Like if you can think of it and you can create a strategic plan to get there, it is possible.
Dude, I have a vision board on my that's my screensaver on my computer. And I can't tell you how many years I've changed it because I accomplished what was on there. I have to update it every year because I've literally accomplished my, when I first made it, I didn't have a bachelor's degree. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree. I wanted to become a firefighter. I wanted to become a paramedic. I wanted to be a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All right. I wanted to have a new house. I wanted to have a pool. I wanted to have a truck the way I have a truck now, a nice one, and all of these things I just accomplished, and I was putting them on that vision board.
I love that.
And I looked at it every day, and it's like I've got things on there now that I'm working towards. And it's huge. That's huge, being able to see it all the time, and then not just see it and imagine it, but also make those action steps towards it. Right?
And that's one thing. That's one of the biggest changes I made over a year ago, is just every day I wake up and I write down every actionable step that I can take to progress whatever plans I have, and just keep going, because I know if you just don't stop.
Some people tell you don't have a to-do list. Fuck that. I have a to-do list, and it keeps me on track. And I love going there and good, I did this. I got this done. I got this done. And at the end of the day, I feel good about myself.
Super necessary.
And if I didn't finish something, I'm like, I better get that done tomorrow then. All right, because life will always happen. But at least, at the end of the day, I can be like, okay, this is what I've accomplished. All right, I wasn't a fucking turd today.
I think that's really about the last thing. It just popped in my head, and I think of this is, I think that when you come from a group that are not of highly successful people that just are lazy in a sense, a lot of people, once they figure out what needs to be done, they try to change everybody else's mind. They try, and I sat for many years. I've started many businesses with many people from my past that I recognized, a month into the business startup that, man, I'm doing all the work. And that's just me. Once I start, like, I will knock out 100 hours in the first 100 hours of work. And then when you meet, but majority of people don't do that. And, and that's why I'm appreciative nowadays. I know, dude, I kid you not, you could ask Mickey actually, like, it took me a moment when we started working together. I was like, man, he's like me. I've never dealt with somebody who gets so many messages, just so much going on. I'm like, is this what I'm like sometimes? Like, I was like, wow, I like this. Like, it took me a moment though, and it's the same thing. Like, I have no doubt, like, with our podcast in here, is the person that went through Buds 4 times going to quit? So like in my mind, I'm like, these people are not going to quit. We're on a mission. We have these plans. We're finding the strategic way to do it, and we will push through and we will be successful. And it's knowing that also additionally motivates me, because at the same time, I don't have people that I know I'm carrying. It's that we're all carrying our own weight in our own way. And it just benefits each other.
That's good.
Goggins' little quote, who's going to carry the boats and the logs?
Yeah.
I think what I think about is unique about you, Gordy, and is you, since I am a self-motivator. I grew up around a lot of bad things too, but I pulled myself out of myself. I never had like positive influence. My dad will tell you I was very different. So I never needed anybody like a positive influence. I just did it myself because I didn't like what I saw.
Right.
In that though, when you're that type of person, you're not empathetic. I struggle with empathy, right? Because I'm like, fuck it, I did it. Why can't you do it?
Right.
What, you're falling back into shit? Well, that's your fucking choice. Pull yourself fucking out. And I can't understand why people make bad choices. And so I've had to struggle with empathy because of the way I am.
Right.
But with you have that ability, right? You're like, hey, I was here. Hey, I slipped back into this. Hey, I did this. And I still had to, and I found positive influence. And I eventually pulled myself up and surrounded myself with the right type of people. And so I think, that's really good, because I think that's the way most people are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
most
then
people struggle.
Most people struggle.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't want to hear, necessarily about, okay, well, you're some type of anomaly person who can just do things. They want to, it's realistic to struggle. Life is struggle, right? It's realistic to fall backwards, and to backslide, and then go, okay, hey, listen, I need help.
Yeah.
I need positive influence. I need to surround myself with good people. And hey, sometimes I am going to slip up. Sometimes I am going to mess up. But guess what? I got to get back on track.
Yeah.
So for me, I was more harsh on other people that weren't also high achievers, because I couldn't understand it. I'm like, yeah, this sucks. Okay, well, fucking pull yourself out of it. Just make the fucking mind switch. And my wife was like, Randy, people just don't do that. I'm like, well, why the fuck not? Just make the mind switch. Just do it. But that's not how people operate. And what I think is so great about your story is you're a regular person, man.
Yeah.
And then you decided, hey, I don't want to be a regular person. I don't want to be a bad person.
Yeah.
I want to be a high achiever. I'm going to find people like Stefan and like Mickey and,
hold myself accountable.
I want to be, there's something I see in them that I want to emulate. Maybe it's not a world champion jiu-jitsu or an Olympic level boxer,
right?
But hey, there are qualities that they have that I'm seeking.
Yeah, a lot of the morals, the values, the service over self. It's just a lot of there's a lot of great morals that can be emulated from the circle that I find that we're surrounded by. You know, we have a really good group of people, I think, that all of us, you know, are surrounded by, and it just, it's such a benefit to your soul, to your mind, to be surrounded by that. Because, man, I tell you, I go back to New Orleans, and it's apparent so quickly, just the disrespect, the communication, the ways people are and everything. It's blatant nowadays.
You've seen the other side, right?
Yeah, now my eyes are open. It's like I'm not blind to like I thought my family was just crazy, but no, they have issues, you know.
No, but now you could help somebody else similar like you.
Right, and that's my goal.
You know,
Yeah.
that's like you, that's there, that, you know, is surrounded by, you know, certain bad influences, and maybe we'll start to come out of it and slide back, and start to come out of it and slide back, and be like, hey man, I've been where you're at.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
This is how you dig yourself out of this.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to do it all by yourself. Find the right type of people.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, that's something I hope to do more on that sooner and, you know, later in life. Be able to get those kids groups and stuff, and to be able to be that big brother style thing and everything. You know, be able to help out these kids, because like we know, there's millions and tens of millions of people that are living in bad situations. My story's no different in certain aspects from many different stories. We all have the opportunity, I think, to struggle at certain points. Mine just has a little more variety than most stories, I guess you could say.
Well, you know, I think a lot of times we go through trials and we go through things so we can help others when they start to go through them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I appreciate y'all having me on. That's really about all I got for everybody, and so I hope that gives you a better idea of who I am, you know, what I'm working on, what I hope to achieve and everything, and where we go from here.
Yeah. Stefan, you got any other questions?
Nope, thanks for sharing your story, man.
Well, for our listeners out there, now you get to know who's behind the scenes, who's kind of driving and recording the Patriot Point show and making Stefan and I look good, you know, when we happen to look good. But thank you for listening. And remember, all right, control the leftist population out there and have your leftists spayed or neutered. Patriot Point show, signing off.
That's good.
I love that. Have your leftist spayed or neutered. I'm so happy you finished that way.